This is The Search for the Sound. I'm Ross Holmes.
My name is Jason Anick.
And today we're joined with one of our biggest heroes and one of the most influential fiddle players ever of all time, Darol Anger. Thank you so much. This is a great honor for us to have you here.
Oh, you guys, I'm loving your project here. It's just a great thing. It's just you're also you're also eloquent and beautiful on camera. It just is a great thing. You know, it's such great players. It's just a beautiful thing. I am on. The honor is all mine. So very happy.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you so
great to
much.
see.
But I suppose before we dive into asking questions and hearing stories and talking shop, let's hear you play. Let's cut to a clip of your famous tune, Ride the Wild Turkey.
Well, that sounds absolutely fantastic. Always amazing to hear you, Daryl. Um, I'd love to hear more about that song and that rippin' solo that you did.
Oh, yeah, well, that was a tune that I wrote quite a while back, and I was sort of desperate to write some tunes because I had decided to make a record, solo record, my first solo record. This was during a time period in the life of the David Grisman Quintet when David was actually on the opposite coast uh, in New Jersey making a gypsy movie, King of the Gypsies, with Stefan Grappelli, and the rest of his band was kind of sitting around going like, "Okay, now what do we do?" I know, I'll make a record with the same guys. And the band. It actually worked pretty well. You're never ready to make your first record, but didn't stop me. And I was sitting around trying to play Cuckoo's Nest. I thought maybe I'll play Cuckoo's Nest, and then I kind of got off on that little da 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 ba da ba da ba da, right? And then he's like, well, what would it sound like if I went ba da da ba 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 da ba, right? So I did stop at four, and then I was, oh, this could be a tune, right? Let's okay, yeah, I'll put an A, and then I'll write two more parts. I'll write a part, and then I'll make the second part exactly the same, but double the length of the first part. So uh, yeah, and then I'll do some crazy rhythm stuff, and yeah, a lot of thought went into it, and then it did, and then it happened. So that's yeah, so that's the short version.
It's one of the most frequently played jam tunes, well, at least in the bluegrass circles that I've hung around for years. Everybody knows the tune. It's just one of the greats in the annals of the American Fiddle Songbook.
Yeah, well, it's always. I mean, it's just insane to have. I've written something like it's sort of like a standard, and it's a super honor. And I can only think that is because there just weren't that many guys out there writing stuff at that point. Stewart, for instance, Stewart Duncan was just he was hanging out in San Diego with Allison Brown, like playing in pizza parlors. So but it's amazing to get to, and of course, really, what happened was Jerry Douglas picked it up and played it on his record, and Stewart played on that, and man, that was pretty incredible. So yeah, it's the serendipity and all that stuff, and I feel lucky and really flattered because it's one of the tunes that that I know, and so if we get to play it, then that's cool.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's wonderful. Well, let's go back a number of years. Do you remember the first time that you heard fiddle? Were you drawn to the sound? Do you remember the early years? And what got you started?
Yeah, it wasn't that early. The first sound, that I really remember reacting to strongly on a record. I must have been about 11 or 12, something like that, and my folks brought home a copy of the Dave Brubeck quartet, whatever it was, Take Five. And I remember listening to the sound of Paul Desmond playing the alto saxophone and going like, wow, just that's an amazing sound. And at the time I was taking classical violin lessons. I had gotten into music because of the Beatles, and I wanted to play guitar, and that didn't work out very well. And so I remember being in a restaurant, being frustrated about the guitar with my parents, and some guy was strolling tables with violin, and I'm like, whoa, he's having fun. It's like cool, it's just, it's great. That looks a lot easier than the guitar. I'll play that. That was my second mistake. So that was weird, but I had no idea fiddling existed until about must have been my junior year in high school. So what was I, like 15 or something like that, and I had already gotten back into electric guitar by that point, and really into Eric Clapton. Anybody with like a really alive at that time, Eric Clapton sounded amazing. He just like his sound was alive and intense, and all those guys, Hendrix, all that stuff. So I was trying to play that on guitar, and then I went to a concert where I heard a group called C Train with Richard Green in it, playing electric violin, and Larry Adamanowicz on drums, and Peter Rowan, with his poncho and his big sombrero, singing, crazy stuff, and it was great. And it was completely changed my life hearing Richard do this stuff at like 110 decibels, playing fast, playing Orange Blossom Special, all this stuff. I'm going like, oh, I already sort of, there's 200 guys ahead of me in my high school, on electric guitar, And if I transfer all the stuff that I've been learning on electric guitar over to violin, which I already have sorted together, I could have a niche, And so that was the thing, It just it kind of went from there. I learned to play guitar by ear, which was great because it had lines and frets and all this stuff. And I'm going, wow, man, I could do the same thing on violin. And so, of course, buying the record and realizing, oh, this is like fiddling. Maybe I'll try to find another fiddle record. And the next fiddle record I found by total accident was a Scott Stoneman record. So I thought, oh, that's fiddling. So that was, for a 14-year-old kid, that was, is kind of what you wanted, in that setting. So I eventually, bought an album of the Texas Fiddle Favorites, and I started to realize, wow, there's more stuff going on there. Oh, and then Byron Berline, of course, who was a West Coast guy and played with the group Country Gazette at that point, and I got that Byron Berline and the Dillards records.
Oh, yeah.
It was amazing, and I just thought, man, the sound of Byron's sound was like, it's like bone conduction or something. It's just like, at that point he had that amazing fiddle, and he knew how to jam the fiddle right in the mic, and you could just hear that thing right inside your head. And then, a year later or something, Vassar showed up and just again, that kind of sound, that sound of like the sound of total conduction, it's like the sound that you hear in your head, and in some ways kind of relatable to an alto sax in that way. That's so intense, and there's so much low mids and mids that are sort of just, they're already, permeating your body. And that's me. That was kind of the sound. I've never been able to get that sound. If we're searching for the sound, it's just not my sound. I guess I don't know. I've spent a lot of time looking around for fiddles and things like that. But yeah, so that was like sort of a just going through that kind of process over a couple of years of just seeing, oh well, wow, this instrument is capable of a lot. And once I got to Vassar, it was like, oh yeah, this instrument is even capable of really deep commentary on the human condition, and all that stuff. So great, I stuck with it.
You were processing all of this music at one time. You had all this fiddle music that you were listening to, and the rock music and the classical violin, with all of these sounds, and just actually playing the different instruments and the experience of playing these different instruments. When it came time for you to find, or you were kind of hunting for that first instrument that kind of represented what you were hearing with saxophone and guitar, what was that? What was the instrument, and why did you find it? How did you find it?
Oh yeah, well I just kept looking, and I was looking for something a little bit more dense and intense, and less, of the kind of what is it? There's that kind of like sounded about 3K, between two and a half thousand cycles and 3,000 cycles. That sort of is like very scraping, kind of the scraping fingernail, and that stuff, and somehow, because I tend to play kind of hard, I'm trying to get some kind of intensity out of the instrument, and I was changing fiddles about every 2 years, and I found something that worked pretty well about a year into playing with David Grisman, and that worked all right. It was supposed to be an Italian violin, but it wasn't. Um, and that went on, but really, I kept looking. I don't really feel like I had some really great instruments. They were fine. There was nothing wrong with any of those instruments. I had a really interesting Italian violin. That had rounded corners, little spirals on the corners. That was pretty cool. And, I wound up actually, the first violin really made me want. You've asked me if the violin, the fiddle that made me want to play all night. And that was actually happens to be this instrument here, made by a fellow named Robert Kogut. And it's, if you can see. You can kind of see the arch on the top, or the lack of arch.
Very flat,
This
yeah.
was a really interesting fiddle. He had it. He kind of put it together at the last minute before uh, Merlefest. Actually, I went to Merlefest and we played at Merlefest. And Bob had a booth there, and he had 7 or 8 fiddles that he had built. And this one was I just threw this together like 2 nights before the festival, and it just had it out of spare parts, and the top's a little flat, and I had the neck was on wrong, and it was like the bridge was like that tall and no arch, and it sounded great. It had this sound of it's just like deep. It had enough brightness. I barely had to touch it, and this fiddle lasted about 2 years until it just went it just went concave. And I sent it back to Bob, and he put a great big honking bass bar in it, and reset the neck, so the lower bridge, and now it sounds like a perfectly good fiddle that I love to have around the house. But it doesn't have that sound. I recorded on a record called Wood Shop with Mike Marshall, and also the second um, uh, Republic of Strings record, Generation Nation, has that fiddle on it, and it just, man, it's just an amazing instrument. Uh,
We'd
and
love
then,
to hear it if you'd play us a little
yeah,
something on
okay,
there.
that instrument is gone. I mean, this is the same instrument, but it's not the same. But it still has that kind of beautiful, it's very easy to play. So it comes
Mm.
out, and there's a couple of funny little wolves. But I use it for teaching. I have gone over to the 5 string world. This is the only 4 string instrument that I have, violin that I have at this point, and pretty much
When
playing
did you
5 strings.
venture to?
Because I don't want to
What?
confuse anybody, because people
Oh,
go,
true, true.
"What string are you playing?" Right? Which that's but
When did you make that 5 string transition?
that was man, where was that? Oh, I actually had Bob Kogut make me. Well, he built another 4 string violin. I said, man, just build one of your good sounding 4 strings, and we'll convert it. We'll convert it up here. And I was living in Portland, Oregon at the time, and I had a guy that I trusted just put a wider fingerboard, which was kind of funny because the neck went up and then the fingerboard kind of widened out from there, and it didn't, it felt fine. It's not that big. It wasn't a big deal. And that sounded great. I actually wound up giving that away to a student that really deserved it. And and then when I moved to Maine, uh, boy, I feel like I'm just talking about myself, talking about myself. I guess that's the point, right?
That's the whole point.
Okay. All right. Anyway, I moved to Maine and gotten to where I was just spending just about every day in John Cooper's shop. John's
Mm.
great violin maker and very generous with his time and his knowledge. And I just hung out in the shop every day for almost a year, 9 months or something. Wound up building a couple of 5 strings for myself, and those sounded pretty good, and they sounded so good. I wound up, and some people bought them. So now I don't have those either. But that was a very big compliment, and if somebody would actually want to buy an instrument that you built. So that was great. But I have it's not here right now. It's actually in the shop, but it was on the clip that we played. A instrument built by a fellow named Nathaniel Rowan, who is up in Vermont, and he's into the alternative shapes and things like that. Although on the inside, he's very, he's right down the line, all the measurements and everything. If you were able to climb inside one of his violins, it would look just like a regular violin, even though it looks like crazy stuff outside. But of course, he never could do that because it's too small.
Mm. Yeah, the world of experimental violin shapes and designs and varnish is something that I think challenges a lot of folks. It they shy away from the progress that is sort of being made, that has been made and is being made. You talked about the Italian fiddle. I remember seeing that had the rounded corners,
Yeah,
and
beautiful.
we had recently we had Joseph Curtin from Ann Arbor on, and he was his ultralight violins and the tweaks to that, and Rowan's violins. They're incredible. For a lot of folks, it's more art or something that's
Yeah,
not even playable, I guess. What's that
yeah. Well,
experience like?
yeah, I mean, Danny Farrington said it, one time. He just said, like, man, if Stradivari and Gardneri came back today, and I said, I looked to see what people are doing. I said, yeah, you all are just doing the same thing. Didn't anybody come up with another idea? You know, um, possibly they would have said that, or maybe they just would have, said, "Give you my royalty, man," or whatever, they would have said. But it is pretty much the same. I really love the idea of people, taking the design and at least tweaking some of the cosmetic stuff. I have a really nice Barry Dudley fiddle, which is also, I've loaned that out to a fellow who we know, Avery Merritt is playing it right now with somebody, and that was cool. That was another, like last minute. I threw together parts and just brought them to the convention, and it was the best fiddle he had there, and he drilled a big hole in the scroll, like just you could see through it, just a big hole. I said, wow, I screwed up the scroll, so I just drilled it out, and it was great. So it took me, I had that at Berkeley for a long time. Yeah, Jason, you saw that. I was looking for about a year just for something to put in that hole, and I finally found a little plastic rooster head that I glued in there. So now it's the rooster. But that's a beautiful instrument too. It's a larger, it's one of those 5-strings that, really they took a Garnieri pattern and kind of traced around the outside. It's about 1/8 of an inch larger than a standard Garnieri pattern. That's a good sounding instrument. It's big. But it's also kind of shallow, which is kind of, so it's got a quicker response than an instrument. It's sort of that Carlene Hutchins thing. I don't know if, I know you guys are familiar with Carlene Hutchins. I don't know if I'm getting a little too esoteric here, but yeah, Carlene. The first person to really apply science, to violins, and she'd take a top off the instrument and put sand on it and put it, vibrate it and put something and see what was going on, where the notes were and everything. And she designed a whole series of different size violins. One of which the normal violin was actually, it was a lot flatter, very shallow and very wide, and then it was also big, so. For me, it's really tough if you have like an instrument that's like bigger, like a viola or something like that, because I'm just out here. I don't like being out here like that.
You gotta be comfortable.
Yeah, you gotta be comfortable. So that's the thing. I had a beautiful instrument made by a fellow named Tom Crowan, who was on the West Coast too, and that one that came and went. Yeah, but I've also been into this octave violin thing, the baritone violin, and in fact, when I first started playing with David, he had done this Rounder record, the David Grisman Rounder album, and Vassar was on that, and Vassar played on a couple of tunes on that record. Basically an octave fiddle. It was like a Barkus Berry thing, like Barkus Berry's making something called the Violectra, which was basically an electric violin with very thick strings. You get twice the mass, you get half the pitch, basically. And sounded pretty, it sounded like Vassar, but really low, It's pretty cool. And David came back with the tapes, and we were going, man, that's amazing. I need to do that with the group. And I didn't have another violin at that time and couldn't afford one. We were all broken with it. David said, hey man, I got a fiddle that belonged to my Uncle Arthur. Why don't you string that up? And I didn't know you could actually buy, I don't know if you could actually buy octave strings at that point. So I took a cello C string and cut one in half. And of course the whole thing came apart like a golf ball would, And so I bought another one and wound it, and glued it, in the middle of the string. And, all this stuff, and viola string and cobbled something together, and it worked great. Used it a lot, and it just was a fantastic instrument. And I've sort of semi-retired it now, and I got Gary Bartig at AES to make me just to send me one of these AES as a London model, one of those 5 strings with a pickup in it, which is so cool. And this 5-string octave. So basically,
Wow.
So I just start laughing every time I play. It's so fun, and of course, it doesn't sound like much until you plug it in, but it does have an acoustic sound to it. And yeah, it's if you want to piss off the cello player in your band, pick this thing up,
That's the way to do it.
plug it in.
I love you. You've been such an experimenter, ultimate searcher over the years, and
So much of that is because I just
tinkering.
wasn't getting the sound that I wanted. It's so funny. Like, oh, I'll try anything. Like anything's better than what's going on. And really, it's so funny. I've got Russ McCumber just sent me a beautiful 5-string. As well as he was studying with Joe Thrift, who played keyboards with Don and the Buffalo. And Joe is a great maker, and Russ is right behind him. It's a really nice instrument, super solid. It's a little
Yeah.
papery on the bottom still, but I think it's going to come in. I think it's going to fill in as I play it. It's only about a couple months old, so who knows what's going to happen. But pretty happy about that. Very solid. Looking for stuff that's as I go on. I think we all kind of start looking for instruments that are more even as we go forward. Rather than having like a lot of personality, we want stuff that's going to behave itself. If we try to do like an F sharp, double stop or something like that, we just want it to be there. We don't want to have to persuade the instrument, to like do that. So many instruments have those
Yep. Yep.
quirks. An instrument that sounds puffy and deep and all cornstarchy is probably going to thin out. Once you get to the E string, right? I don't know. I'm sure you guys have found that solution. Well, man, everything I hear from both of you guys is ridiculous. You've found the sound, I believe.
I
But
mean, yeah. I think we're always on the search as well. I think that's something that is always deep within probably most musicians is forever searching.
yeah,
We're never settling. We're always working on things, and I've I have definitely been playing a couple newer instruments in the past couple of years. So I've kind of switched the search from like playing one instrument for 10 years, and then um, kind of then found two instruments, one that do different things.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
That's so
Instead
true.
of looking for one instrument that does everything perfectly, I've kind of found two that have kind of both within it what I feel like I'm looking for, while still maintaining my sound and my integrity
Yeah.
and the voice I have, but
I
kind
don't
of
know if you can
different
get away with
shades.
it. Can you even get away from it? I did it. I got two things from Russ, and I had the Barry, I had the Nathaniel Rowan, I had another AES London, which I love. Just because I need to plug in sometimes,
Hmm.
and this plastic violin from Andrew Glasser. It's Glasser violin, that electric. I did a shootout, I had 8 of them. I had 8, and I did 8 different tracks, and I compared them, and it's like it wasn't that much difference. I can't help it. It's just the
Yeah.
way you play. Like what? Why? Just you might as well please yourself. Just
Yeah, I do think that is something, and it kind of goes back to the legendary story of Heifetz, who is like, "Oh, your violin sounds amazing," and he's like, "I don't hear it," you know. It's what we put into it. Of course, they're remarkable tools that really help us get
yeah,
to our best selves or not. But I do agree that especially people who have a distinctive voice, and Ross, you and Darol, of course, um, we could hear a record and be like, that's Darol, and you've played so many different fiddles on all those different recordings,
yeah,
so we're hearing you, and that's the most important thing, is that we hear you first, and that always comes across. And then like you said, it's kind of fun to explore. Some people just don't want to have to worry about it. Like we did an interview with Brittany, same fiddle forever, and
Yeah.
totally happy. Some people are tinkerers and searchers, and um, and it doesn't necessarily mean that one is a better way. But yeah, I think the most important thing is that you you feel like your voice comes across with everything, and I think that is always the case
Yeah.
with you, Darol, for sure. No
So
matter
really,
what instrument.
my yeah, yeah, Ross. What do you, you know?
Well, I was going to say one of the things that I find really interesting about the trajectory of the instruments in your careers. There's this constant theme of contemporary and modern instruments, and for a lot of musicians and a lot of collectors, it's the intrigue of the old instruments, the old French, Italian, German. There's this lust, this desire for these beautiful instruments, and they come at a price for sure, but as we have found experimenting ourselves on different instruments in shops and at jam sessions with our friends' instruments and conversing with luthiers, um, it is at this point in time our understanding of lutherie is so vast that these new instruments coming out sound like they've been played for 40 or 50 years, if not longer, and the break-in time is so much quicker, and they basically come out of the case the first day and they're pretty wonderful. I'm curious,
Yeah.
your relationship with these contemporary makers, was it sort of out of necessity when you were, dabbling with the octave string, exploration, or with five strings, or how did that all happen?
Yeah, I've always been interested in building. Even before I joined up with David, I was, I dropped out of college and to play bluegrass music in pizza parlors and build mandolins, F5 style mandolins. And I didn't really think I'd ever get to building violins, but I love all all the vibe about building string instruments, the wood, just the lore of it, all that stuff. And so, when I think about buying it, I want to have some kind of relationship with somebody who's alive, and just see what they're doing, and how they do it. And that's, to me, that's a lot more satisfying than, having this, gorgeous antique, which I'm a little rough on these things anyway, and I'd hate to, I mean, you're kind of a steward of especially, the older instruments, you want to, you don't want to ruin them or break them or wreck them. I was one of the first people I think, to really get into carbon fiber bows for that reason, because I've broken a couple of bows. And I hate to do that. It's just a drag. So yeah, just and the idea that somebody could like create something that could sound great and look cool, and be different. I know that with Nathaniel, his are pretty radical. And he different shape sound holes and everything. You can't call them F holes anymore. They're more like orchid Z holes or something. But he said, yeah. Well, I asked him about it. He said, wow, it took me about 2 years to develop a shape that did the same thing as these F holes, because there's research now. Sam Zygmuntovich was a big proponent of this thing. These little guys, they go up and down, they go, this one does too, and then the whole violin's kind of twisting. What do you do if you like the sound of the violin? You want something that's going to do the same thing, and so when you change any part of it, it's going to be different. Sometimes better. You might want something beefier, or not. It's really interesting. So that's that kind of stuff. That fascinates me a lot. Just the idea that, well, does it make a difference to this part that if you make it wider? If you move the F holes out, for a 5-string, is that going to make it bassier? Not necessarily. That's what's really interesting. It's like you'd think, logic would dictate that if you made this center part wider, a little bit, you get a little bit more blah, supposedly, but I haven't really noticed that that is the case.
Hmm.
So, well, what? It's crazy. Yeah, so it's very interesting. But certainly, I might have to experiment, with like very low. I mean, what's the maximum amount of bridge height you can get with an arch this low, and not have it, or maybe you're on a 2-year cycle,
Yeah.
just make another top.
What's
I
wrapped
think.
around your bridge right there?
Oh, uh, that's one of those rubber bands that comes on the broccoli.
Oh yeah.
And I just wrapped it around because it was a little buzzy, so I just kind of damped it. You don't want a full on mute, but if you just wrap a little rubber around the bottom of the bridge, it's gonna kind of damp it a little bit. And now this particular rubber band is starting to get a little. It's gonna come apart pretty soon.
Probably need to get some more broccoli.
I have to get some more broth. Yeah.
I think one of the other luxuries about working with a contemporary luthier, especially with you, Darol, where you've been searching for so long, and I'm sure a lot of these luthiers also know you're playing and trying to know what you're looking for, so they can also get excited about. All right, let's see what kind of tweaks I can do to get that. Try to help you get that sound that's in your head, and can experiment, and if it doesn't work out they can, hey, let's try this one. And you can't do that with these old Italian makers for obvious reasons. So that's something that's really exciting, besides also, like you said, the personal connections to it. um, but yeah, but having that ability to have input and give
Yeah.
feedback, direct feedback, and then maybe that informs what they do with the next one that they build for you. Or yeah, so that's something that is great about modern instruments, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm liking that. And
You've always been a musician who has uh, sought out different genres and, of course, different sounds and different collaborations with musicians. And I'm guessing it's a safe bet that your answer to the question that we ask everybody, are you still searching for the sound? I'm sure that I've got an idea what your answer will be, but I'd love to hear you elaborate on what that means.
yeah, well, it's funny, I've sort of in the last couple of years, I've just sort of well, that shootout was kind of a moment for me,
Mm.
and but it was kind of building, the last couple of years. It was just like I'm just going to sound the way I sound, and it's not going to really make that much difference to the listener uh, what instrument I'm playing. As long as there's a C string involved, which that's and so I'm just kind of to the point where, well, I want something even, and I want to enjoy playing it. And as I age, I want something that's a little bit more sensitive. The sound will come out of the instrument a little faster. Um, the Rowan fiddle is really it sounds like a 150-year-old violin, and as far as how sensitive it is, you really all you have to do is touch it, and it just. And this one's super even, super deep, and on the high strings, super solid. But I really have to really work, pull the sound out, which is fine. It's gonna change, but yeah, the Rowan. But if violin is super sensitive like that, it's also going to be a little touchy. I think right now it's in the shop because the high strings, certain double stops, they actually make my ears load up so that I can't hear anything. And it's like, it's not exactly what you'd call a wolf, but it's definitely something that is
I've
that
experienced
needs to
that.
be remedied because it wasn't like that.
Ah,
A year ago it wasn't like so. Something happened. I don't know,
well,
but
yeah, I love that. I love that. You do that shootout with 8 instruments. You say, I'm going to sound like me no matter what. Um, and that is so true. But at the same time, still tinkering, still
oh
doing
yeah,
that. And I love that, like, even, comfortable, a joy to play, right?
yeah,
Ultimately, you want an instrument that that makes you be the best you. And so
Yeah.
that's so important. All
Who
those
says
factors.
planning, because, if unless you're really spending the time, right? Yeah. You just, how can you do anything? You want to that feeling we've all gotten, at like a camp or like a festival or something like that when you've been playing like for 4 days straight and not even sleeping or barely eating and you're just playing and you get to that point where there's whatever you're not even thinking. I mean, you could have thought you think of it like 30 seconds later. Oh, that was cool. That was great. Have I ever done that before? Oh, it's just
Hmm.
that connection and. You have to play a lot to get there, or at least I do. I don't know. Most people seem to have it, but yeah, that's sort of just bypass the conscious assemblage of neurons and go, straight to autonomic nervous system. It's just coming out of wherever, wherever.
Absolutely.
Just leave that there.
Oh my goodness, this has been an absolute pleasure having you join us and discussing, your the history with your instruments and the relationship that you have with these makers. I suspect that this will be just the first of several episodes because there are about a million questions that we have between the two of us that
No,
we'd love to.
that's great. I love talking to you guys. I mean, you're so, like I said, you're articulate and funny, and you play great, and we're all in the search. It's so great that you're doing this. Can't wait to hear some of the other podcasts in this vein too. But yeah, I'm
And
happy to come back and we'll geek out some more. Maybe we'll have
next time,
another.
hopefully, we'll be able to, next time I'm in Nashville, we'll do one in person and
Oh yeah,
play some tunes. That is that's something to look forward to as well. So
yeah, very
We'll
cool.
just have to rent a studio out for about a week and book fiddle players every 3 or 4 hours to just come in and have a hang.
Wow.
It's going to be the
Oh man,
spot.
can you imagine? Oh man, yeah, God, it's just ridiculous out here. It's just I'm glad I'm sort of semi-retired because man, if I was trying to get work, it would be like come on, hey, ah. But it's just so beautiful because I know most of them and it's just like between Billy Contreras and Buddy is still here, he's still around and people, Tracy, for God's sake, is
hmm.
here. We're supposed to get together this week, and Tracy Silverman,
Yep.
just total original crazy guy who can play anything, but just doesn't care. he just oh yeah, okay, of course I'm good. Yeah, who cares? You know, it's like,
Well, when we did his episode, he's like, yeah, I rarely ever play acoustic violin anymore, Tracy, but he busts out Sibelius Violin Concerto, and I was like, I haven't played that for 30 years, and we're like, it's perfect. Yes, that's so.
yeah.
Oh,
Oh man,
goodness.
well, it's a wonderful community down there. I can't wait to come visit you guys.
Yeah, keep
Ross and I have
coming.
been talking about for a long time coming down there and visiting, and some other friends, bow makers and violin makers down there. So no shortage of things to do. So well, enjoy yourself, immerse yourself down there, and
I will. And
yeah,
I'm going to eat some hot chicken.
Get
yes.
that hot chicken, man. That sounds like the an upcoming instrumental that you're going to write.
I don't know. Hasn't somebody already written that? Do I have to do that?
Too much hot chicken.
But is there too much hot chicken?
Can there be? We'll find out.
uh,
Oh.
Next time, Jason, you'll be here. We'll have a live in-person interview with a
yeah,
table
and we'll have it
fiddle.
all over our
We'll,
fingers.
we'll review the hot chicken. Search for the chicken.
Hot licks, hot chicken.
Oh man, they could
Uh,
do just a cornballs with like there. Oh yeah, right. Yeah, gotta have and hush puppies too. Okay.
Yeah, all the trimmings.
Well,
Thank
thank you guys. This was a blast.
So great chat.
Yeah, we'll talk soon. All right.
Yeah, sounds
Absolutely.
great. Thanks, Daryl.
Okay.
Do well.
Stay in tune.